All we know so far is who everybody will be playing. They'll be playing 8 games, 4 at home, 4 away. We don't know yet the order or the schedules. That's going to come later. There's a bunch of restrictions on that. For those wondering, why can't they just go and publish a fixture list? They have to get advice from local police. They have to avoid certain situations, 2 teams from the same city playing on the same night. So it is actually a big cluster mess, and it does take them some time to go and sort that out. We'll know that Saturday the picture might change, but right now we're dealing with the fact that we just know who's playing who and whether it's at home or away. So Ryan, one of the things is, before there was a big advantage to being a top seed, to being in pot 1 going into the competition, because obviously you wouldn't be playing other pot 1 teams. Now everybody's playing 2 teams from pot 1, 2 teams from pot 2, 2 teams from pot 3, 2 teams from pot 4. So there's really no edge in being kind of good or highly seeded going into it. It should make, on paper, for a tighter competition.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about this, at least today, as we're doing this in the aftermath of the draw, is that I do think it should make a much more interesting competition. And I think we'll get into this, you look at the strength of schedule, there's almost no correlation between how hard your schedule is and what pot you were in, which I think is good. But it doesn't really lend itself to like the pageantry of a draw and doesn't fit into the structures of like, usually there's one team you want to avoid from pot C, right? Because it's some team that hadn't been in the Champions League for a while, like Newcastle last year. And that just doesn't exist this year. So I think it was interesting that I do think it'll make the competition way more compelling, but also like doing a draw for it and then having to wait for the schedule. It's just, I understand people being pretty confused.
You know what? We have Mark here to be the grumpy one who's old school and non-paced with technology. You don't need to fill that role too, Ryan. Just be a little more millennial, a little bit more.
I'm just saying I understand how Mark's feeling.
Mark, was it really that painful? They wrapped everything up in just over an hour, and that's including the President's Awards for Gigi Buffon and Cristiano Ronaldo, and including that long film, which I enjoyed, which maybe not everybody enjoyed, featuring all those former legends, and of course capped by Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
Listen, I thought the film was the best part of the draw. I thought it was great. I thought he gives Zlatan and Buffon an honorary Champions League medal, and just thank them for being there. Look, the draw has given me a headache. I think it was too fast in many ways, because I'm trying to keep up with what team's schedule is, and before you know it, they've moved on to the next teams. So I don't know who Liverpool have got or Man City have got instantly, because I'm looking to see who they've got, and it's gone. So it was a little bit too quick. So I'm not quite sure that the whole draw, as Ryan said, it wasn't really made for TV. I think it was something that probably just best to just press a button and do it all at once, because it just felt a little bit hard to keep up with. So, all the teams got what they expect. What they got eight games, and it's going to take a bit of working out. We're doing this half an hour after it finished. I think it does need a little bit of digesting for ourselves, for fans, for the team, for the managers. I'm sure everyone's looking at it thinking, this is taking a bit of working out.
It probably does. This is all new for all of us. I agree with you on the spectacle front. I don't know if it's a tweak of maybe leaving the graphics up on screen longer so people can follow along, or maybe repeat them in a crawl at the bottom. I think these are all things that are going to be figured out. But right now, as it stands, Ryan, you told us that really nobody should have a big advantage in terms of strength of schedule. Obviously, somebody will, because the way they make the pots is they do it based on the UEFA coefficients, and teams that haven't been in European competition in a while are going to have very low coefficients, or in fact zero in many cases, like Girona or Bologna. That said, taking that into account, how is the strength of schedule looking? Who's got the toughest? What kind of teams have the toughest schedule, and how tough is it really?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the teams with the tough schedules, the team with the easy schedules, it's like an array of teams. I think among the big clubs, it's sort of unquestionably PSG who has the hardest schedule. Bayern Munich.
All right. For those not following at home, like Mark, Paris Saint-Germain's schedule includes Bayern Munich, Manchester City, Atletico Madrid, Arsenal, PSV Eindhoven, Salzburg, Girona and Stuttgart. Now, Girona and Stuttgart, two examples of teams that are what we talked about, right? Two top four teams who have very low coefficients, right?
Yes, Sturm Graz, as you pointed out to me before the show. That's how you pronounce it.
Sturm Graz, yeah.
Have a higher coefficient than either Girona or Stuttgart. And if you look at the betting odds, any other kind of modeling of the sport, those teams are going to be stronger, even though they have lower points. So in that regard, yeah, it doesn't quite match up. I think Feyenoord among mid-tier teams have a really difficult schedule, which is kind of, I guess, the downside of this format. And then at the other side, I think an interesting thing is among all the English teams, I think Aston Villa actually has the easiest path of the four, which previous setup, Aston Villa would have had a really difficult chance to get to the round of 16 because they would have been in pot 4, could have been with 3 other big teams. So I think Villa, look at their schedule.
Do you want me to read it out since I have it right here, since I'm prepared?
Go for it. I'm
Villa schedule: Bayern Munich, Leipzig, Juventus, Bruges, Young Boys Bern, Celtic, Monaco, and Bologna.
Yeah, so I think obviously Bayern's tough. I think Leipzig is probably the easiest pot 1 team that anyone could have drawn. Juve is tough from pot 2, but Club Brugge is well below, I think, the average level of quality. And then Young Boys and Celtic from pot 3 those are just teams that Aston Villa is going to be favored to be both home and away, I think. And then Monaco and Bologna, I think, are tougher, but also teams that Villa should be favored against. I think, especially given their relative strength to Man City, Arsenal, and Liverpool, seeing that Villa got to have a much easier path, I think, than either 3 was interesting to me.
Can I jump in on that?
Mark, yeah.
I think Villa got it. I think Villa got it tough in the sense that because they're not in the same level as Arsenal, Liverpool, or Man City. I think Villa will find it hard to get out of that section because Bayern and Juve for me will be too good for Villa. I think Monaco away, tough game. I just think Villa are going into this with a lot of inexperience. And yes, they got to the semi-finals of the Conference League last year, but I just think there's a danger for me of Villa by the headlights. And even the Celtic game, Celtic at home, for people outside the UK, that will be a huge occasion because it's Celtic, Scottish champions. Anytime they play an English team, so-called Battle of Britain they call it, and the Scottish teams will always overperform. So I think for Villa, I think it's a tough one. I appreciate what you're saying, Ryan, in terms of how it stacks up. Maybe statistically, but I think from an emotional side of it, I think that's going to be tough for Villa.
So this is a good time to remind people that, in case you don't know, the top 8 teams, they advance automatically. The teams that finish between 9 and 24 go into a 2-legged playoff, and then teams between 25 and 36 are eliminated. Now, obviously, nobody wants to play 2 extra fixtures in January, so I think we can take it as read that I think that's going to be a pretty strong incentive. When you're talking about Villa advancing, are you presumably, Mark, you're talking about Villa advancing and finishing in the top 8? Is that what you're talking about, or in the top 24?
No. Well, top 24, isn't it? I still think they've obviously got a chance of that because it's the bottom. They're not going to be in the bottom 8, I don't think. But I do think that it's going to be hard for them. But listen, if I'm a Villa fan, I'm thinking it's great. You've got 2 European heavyweights at home, but you might be a bit greedy wanting to play. You want to play Bayern Munich, I guess, and go to Juventus. But still, I think it's a great draw for Villa from a fan perspective. But I think it's a tough one. For me, Liverpool have got the best draw. I think Liverpool have got, the 2 toughest games at home, and the rest are fairly straightforward.
Yeah, that's another factor, actually, the home and away aspect of this, right? Or is it, Ryan? I mean, is it a big deal? Is it something that we kind of overemphasize, home record, away record, and stuff like that?
No, I in a book that just came out by Ian Graham, former director of research at Liverpool, he said that home field advantage is essentially worth having Messi on your team versus not having him. And
you would think that this is a guy who worked at Anfield for a decade. If he'd worked somewhere else, it might be a little different.
Yeah. That's the example. But yeah, it makes a huge difference. So I think Mark's right. Playing Real Madrid, they're the second favorites in the betting odds. I think a lot of people would consider them the favorites. Playing them at the Bernabeu, Liverpool would not be favored. playing at Anfield, Liverpool are going to be more likely to win that game, at least on the odds, than Madrid will. So it does make a sizable difference. So that I think it looks hard for Liverpool on a pure just average quality of the teams, because they got Leverkusen and Madrid, which are two of the tougher teams to draw. But having them both at home sort of makes it a little more manageable than it looks, I think, at first glance.
So one big thing when we talk about qualifying, and we're looking at this, everybody's going to go and play 8 games, is how many points are you likely to need to advance? And here, there's a bit of a disparity, right? So to advance to the playoffs, in other words, to get in the top 24, the UEFA guys yesterday did a bunch of simulations, and they said, "Oh, we think that 6 points is kind of the threshold to get to be able to qualify." Dale Johnson, who did a big simulation for us, he puts that number closer to 9 points based on the simulation and the testing that he's done. Ryan, you're the tiebreaker here. Who's right and who's wrong, Dale or the nerds at UEFA?
Yeah, given that we talked about the UEFA coefficient giving Stuttgart 0 points, I'm going to side with Dale. Yeah, the other estimates that I've seen have it at around 8 to 10 to sort of guarantee that you get into the playoff, and 14 to 16 to finish top 8. So Dale's right again.
So 14 to 16 to finish top 8, that suggests to me that, unlike a league, nobody will have opened up a big lead at the top, because this is the other big talking point, Mark. In the past, obviously, we've had dead rubbers. Looking at this, again, the people who've done the simulations, they've come to us and they've said, you know what, going into match day 8, the final match day, we think there's only going to be a couple teams that are going to be sure of where they're going to finish, that have nothing left to play for. A couple teams who maybe have already qualified top 8, a couple teams who might know that they're in that middle pack, and a couple teams that know that they're out of everything and won't be even dropping out in the Europa League, because there is no drop down in the Europa League. Does that, I'm going to ask, I mean, Ryan can give us a more reasoned answer. To me, in an unreasoned way, that doesn't feel right, doesn't feel likely. How does it feel to you, Mark?
No, I guess it depends on the schedule of fixtures, doesn't it? It depends how the draw plans out. If some teams have a loaded fixture list where they get their easiest games first, then they might be clear by game 6. But some teams may have it the other way around, and they may be out of it early on. So I don't think we can kind of say that until we see how the fixtures are played out and what the schedule is. But I do think we're going to get to a point where a couple of teams at least will be clearing through by the time it's match day 6 or 7.
But it is even match day 6. Wow, that would be, I think, worst case scenario.
Well, let's take Liverpool for example, because if Liverpool play Real Madrid in their last game, or has that already been dropped? I'm not sure. Please.
No, it's not till Saturday.
Liverpool play. No, right. Okay, so let's say Liverpool play Real Madrid in their last game at Anfield, and then they play, AC Milan away in their second last game. Then you could argue that the 2 of the hardest games are right at the end of the competition, so they could be clear by match day 6. So I don't know. I do need to lie down at the moment, but I don't think it's going to be as clear, as strong as you ever say.
Ryan, help us out here. Are we going to get a bunch of dead rubbers, meaningful games, teams saying like, all right, we'll definitely be in the playoffs, we'll definitely be top 8? And is that going to, and I'm assuming that's going to impact things, because if I literally have nothing to play for, I mean, UEFA say that, but there's going to be, I think, every place that you're above the other one, it's going to give you £275,000, or euros, which is a pittance to many of these teams. It's a lot to some of them, but that's not really an incentive. Is that a risk?
I think it's possible, but one thing that's happening with this new setup is that you're seeded the entire tournament based on where you finish. So if you finish first or second, you're guaranteed to play the lower seeded teams that advance from the preliminary knockout round. And then you're also going to be matched up against the 8th place or 7th place team that advances. So there is seeding that's on, that's like up for grabs the entire time. And I don't like, I guess we'll see, but like, it's hard to picture anyone just like going on a massive run and like winning every game and being so far ahead of everyone else. Just because of, I don't know, just looking at the schedule and kind of weighing things up, it doesn't really feel like we're in a atmosphere where that's likely to happen. And then you have the multiple sort of, you have the top 8 fighting for seeding. You have the teams around 8 fighting to get into the top 8. Then you have, 11 through 15 fighting for their own seeding in the first preliminary stage. Then the next glut of teams fighting to get in. So it feels like there's enough different levels of incentives to potentially avoid that, but we've never seen it before, so who knows?
I'm not big on the seeding at all. In fact, I argued this, and in fact, Theodoridis, the general secretary of UEFA, agrees with me. Although I think he's the only one. If you make the seed, we should make the seeds meaningful. If you finish your top seed, you get to pick your opponent. Finish second, you get to then select an opponent out of that. That would make it exciting. You could have it on television. You have it on clock. That would make it meaningful. You're with me, right, Ryan? It's me, you, and Theo, right?
I think they should do that in every sport. Like, if you're the 1 seed, you should get to pick who you play, not just like
absolutely. Like
in the NBA playoffs, the Knicks played the Sixers, and the Sixers were just injured for a lot of the year. The Sixers were not the 7th. We don't need to get into that anyway.
Yeah, no, it makes so much more sense if you want to actually make it meaningful. That's just my view anyway. Our producer, Tom, is asking me to ask you guys what games you're most looking forward to, because viewers really care to know what games get Mark Ogden excited. No, just kidding. It is a standard question. Mark, I'm going to give you a few more minutes so you can collect your thoughts, because I know this is really difficult for you to answer. So I'm going to go to you first, Ryan, since your head might be a little bit clearer than it is with us old folk.
Yeah, it's hard not to look forward to Madrid going to Anfield. The weird things always happen whenever those teams play. It's the Arne Slot era. It's Liverpool back in the Champions League after missing out. And the last time those teams played at Anfield, it was one of the craziest games I can remember, where Liverpool briefly looked like they were going to win 7-0 and were winning by 2 goals, and then got absolutely annihilated by the end of the game. So I think like that's if I had to pick one game, that's the one that I think is going to be the most sort of.
Hey, no question, that's a showbiz game, and I'm gonna give this idea now to Liverpool, to Michael Edwards and Billy Hogan. Invite Jurgen Klopp back for that game. Have him be like the stadium announcer, announcing the guys, get the crowd G'd up. You have to do this. That would be showbiz. Augie, what about you?
Listen, again, you're right, Liverpool, Madrid, but it depends when it is. If it's match day 8, then it probably wouldn't be as interesting as if it's match day 2.
Come on, you don't have to suck the fun out of everything.
Battle for the 1 seed.
No. I tell you what, the game I'm looking forward to is Aston Villa v Celtic, because I just think it'll be a madhouse. It'd be the Champions League can be quite sterile at times, and it's the best competition around, but it can be quite sterile to get the wrong games. And you got 2 clubs that know they're going to go through. I think Aston Villa v Celtic would be crazy. I think it'll be a great game and a great occasion. 2 teams that aren't going to win the Champions League, but I think in terms of a occasion and atmosphere and a game that's probably got real jeopardy, I think that'd be a really good game to watch.
Final thought on this, because I just want to hear from you, Ryan, because you've also looked at like the bookie side of things. I'm kind of like the fact that we get to see some teams that we literally have never seen in the Champions League before, like Slovan Bratislava, like Bologna, Girona, whatever. Stuttgart, I think they must have been there before because they won the league, but hasn't been a while. Can any of these newcomers do anything? And I'm not including Aston Villa in that list, because Aston Villa actually won the Champions League or the European Cup. So no, you don't get lumped in with the Bolognas and Slovan Bratislavas of this world.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do. I mean, in some ways, this format fights back against randomness because it evens everyone's schedules out. But also, I think it does give the lower seeded teams a better shot of making it to knockout rounds, because one, there are more teams that make the knockout rounds, 24 teams. And then once you're there, it's 2 games, anything can happen. So I think like the structure itself gives them a shot. I just think the thing that's like a little bit of a bummer with Stuttgart, Bologna, Girona is like just the thing that always happens where these teams would be super exciting if they were the exact same teams from last year, but they've all lost either key players or their coach or both. So yeah, I'm not, I wish I could be more positive on one of them making a deep run. I think someone will make a deep run like Dortmund did last year.